My teacher confessed she's been in love with me since I was a student. She's been grooming me for 15 years. I'm now an adult. Imagine this. You have a teacher in high school. She's young. She's cool. She's different from other teachers. She makes you feel seen. She notices things about you that other teachers don't. She creates opportunities to spend time with you. One-on-one tutoring, after-class conversations, text messages. You're a teenager. You think she's just being a good teacher, a mentor. But looking back with adult understanding, you realize she was grooming you. She was laying a foundation, building trust, creating dependency, positioning herself as uniquely understanding, and you didn't see it because you were a child, and she was an adult in a position of authority. Then one day, years later after graduation, after you're an adult, she confesses that she's been in love with you the entire time. She tells you that everything she's done, every interaction, every message, has been part of a 15-year plan to build a relationship with you. She's been grooming you since you were a teenager, and now she's admitting it. This is a story about recognizing predatory behavior, about understanding manipulation when it's been happening to you, about processing the fact that someone you trusted was deliberately abusing their position of power. Okay, before I read this full story, I need to be very clear about what we're discussing. This is from RR Just No SO and R Surviving Infidelity, though it fits better in grooming survivor communities. Content warning, this story discusses predatory grooming behavior, abuse of power, authority, manipulation and psychological abuse, long-term predatory conduct, adult-child boundary violations, professional abuse. This is not romanticizing a relationship, treating grooming as acceptable, minimizing the abuse, entertainment-focused. This is educational about grooming tactics, validating survivor experience, focused on recognizing abuse, advocating for accountability, healing-oriented. What's important to understand about grooming? Grooming is not a mistake. It's not a gray area. It's not misunderstood love. Grooming is a deliberate, calculated pattern of behavior designed to build trust with a victim, break down their defenses, normalize inappropriate behavior, create isolation and dependency, position the abuser as uniquely understanding, create complicity, make the victim feel responsible. When a person in a position of authority, a teacher, coach, mentor engages in grooming, it's predatory, period. By the end, you're going to understand how grooming works, why victims often don't recognize it, and why the confession years later is also part of the manipulation. This is heavy material, but it's important. Let's get into it. I'm 32 years old now. When this confession happened, I was 30. Let me walk you through how this started. I had Mrs. Chen as an English teacher in 10th grade. I was 15 years old. She was probably in her late 30s, early 40s at the time. She was different from other teachers. She was warm. She was interested in her students as people. She didn't just teach, she listened. I had a difficult home life. My parents were going through a rough patch. I was acting out at school. I wasn't engaged in my classes, Mrs. Chen noticed. She asked me to stay after class one day. She said, "I see something in you. I think you're special, but you're not applying yourself. I want to help you." At 15, that felt amazing. A teacher noticed me. A teacher believed in me. She offered to tutor me after school, just for English. She said she saw potential in my writing, so I started staying after class. Just me and her. We'd talk about books, about writing, about life. She asked about my family situation. She listened to my problems. She validated my feelings. Looking back now, this is textbook grooming. But at 15, it felt like someone finally understood me. Grooming doesn't look like abuse when it's happening. It looks like mentorship, like special attention, like care. The abuser builds trust first. They position themselves as the one person who truly sees you. Over the course of that year, Mrs. Chen became my safe person, the adult I could talk to, the person who understood me. She started texting me. She said it was for tutoring purposes to send me assignments, to check on my writing, but the text became more personal. She'd ask about my feelings, about my relationships, about my dreams. She'd say things like, "You're so mature for your age. Most people don't understand you like I do. You're special, different." These are grooming phrases, but I didn't know that. She also started creating situations where we were alone. She'd ask me to help her with things after school. She'd create reasons for private conversations, and she started normalizing inappropriate conversations. She'd talk about her own romantic struggles. She'd talk about her marriage in ways that weren't professional. She was sharing things with me that an adult shouldn't share with a teenager. In my senior year, things escalated slightly. Nothing physically inappropriate yet, but emotionally and psychologically. The manipulation deepened. She told me in confidence that her marriage was struggling. She told me she felt understood by me in ways she didn't feel understood by her husband. She said, "You're the only person who really gets me." I was 17 years old. I felt important. I felt needed. She never explicitly asked for anything, but she was positioning the relationship as something deeper than teacher-student. This is a key grooming tactic. Making the victim feel responsible for the abuser's emotional needs. Making the victim feel special and chosen. Creating a sense of intimacy that shouldn't exist. After I graduated high school, Mrs. Chen and I stayed in contact. She said it was because she cared about my academic future. She wanted to mentor me. We continued texting. She'd ask how college was going. She'd ask about my relationships. She'd send me articles and videos, always with notes like, "I thought of you when I saw this." She was staying present in my life. In college, I dated people. I had normal relationships. But whenever I'd mention a girlfriend, Mrs. Chen would ask detailed questions. She'd find small ways to criticize them. She'd say things like, "I'm just not sure she appreciates you like you deserve to be appreciated." Or, "I don't think she understands who you really are." She was subtly undermining my relationships. She was positioning herself as the person who truly understood me. Interactive moment. When you're a teenager and an adult is grooming you, how would you recognize it? What would it look like? Part 4, the post-graduation years. Deepening grooming, 14 Mao 20 Pak. The manipulation continues into adulthood. The grooming doesn't stop because the victim graduated. After college, Mrs. Chen and I maintained contact. She was no longer my teacher. I was an adult in my mid-20s, but the dynamic never really changed. She reached out more frequently. She wanted to meet up. She'd say it was to catch up, to see how I was doing. We'd get coffee. She'd ask about my life, my job, my relationships. She'd listen intently. She'd make me feel heard. But she was also continually positioning herself as uniquely important to me. She'd say things like, "I'm so proud of the man you've become. I saw this potential in you when you were 15. I knew you were special." She was claiming credit for my success. She was positioning herself as the person who believed in me when no one else did. By my late 20s, I had a long-term girlfriend. I was serious about the relationship. I thought I might marry this woman. And suddenly Mrs. Chen's behavior shifted. She started texting more frequently. She suggested we meet up without telling my girlfriend. She said, "I miss you. I feel like I don't get to see you anymore." When I mentioned having plans with my girlfriend, she'd go quiet for days. She'd send messages about how alone she felt, how she didn't have anyone who really cared about her. She was punishing me for spending time with someone else. This is classic grooming and emotional abuse, isolation tactics. Making the victim feel responsible for the abuser's emotional well-being, punishing the victim for having other relationships. I didn't have language for what was happening. I just knew that Mrs. Chen was upset, and I felt responsible for making her feel better. So I'd reach out, I'd make time to see her. I'd prioritize her feelings over my own relationship. Eventually, my girlfriend noticed. She said, "Why are you in constant contact with your old teacher? Why do you drop everything when she texts you? This isn't normal." I said, "She's just lonely. She's been important to me my whole life." My girlfriend said, "That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice our relationship for her." But I was unable to set that boundary. I was too enmeshed in the dynamic she'd created. This is how grooming manifests in adulthood. The victim feels unable to set boundaries with the abuser, because the abuser has positioned themselves as uniquely important and irreplaceable. The victim feels responsible for the abuser's emotional well-being. The victim has been trained to prioritize the abuser's needs. My girlfriend eventually broke up with me. She said she felt like she was competing with Mrs. Chen for my attention. She said the dynamic was unhealthy. And when she left, Mrs. Chen was there. She texted me. She said, "I'm so sorry your relationship didn't work out. But I'm glad I'm here for you. I'm always here for you." She was waiting in the wings. She had positioned herself to be the support when my other relationships failed. This is calculated. This is predatory. When did you realize this was grooming? At what point would you have recognized the manipulation? When I was 30 years old, Mrs. Chen reached out and asked to meet in person. She said it was important. We met at a coffee shop. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her. We were both adults now. She was in her mid-50s, I was 30. She ordered coffee and she looked at me and she said, "I need to tell you something I've been carrying for a long time." I said, "Okay." She said, "When you were my student, I developed feelings for you. Not in a predatory way, but I cared about you deeply." I said, "I know. You were a good teacher." She said, "No, it's more than that. I've been in love with you." She said, "For the past 15 years, everything I've done, every text, every conversation, Every time I've reached out, it's been because I love you. I couldn't process what I was hearing. She said, I know it's complicated because you were my student, but you're an adult now, and I think we should explore what could be between us. She was actually asking me to enter into a romantic relationship with her. I said, She said, I know it's shocking, but think about it. We have history. We understand each other. I've always been there for you. What she was doing right in that moment was reframing her grooming as love. She was reframing 15 years of predatory behavior as devotion. She was also making it seem like I should be grateful, like she'd been investing in me all these years and now I owed her something. I said, Mrs. Chen, I need to think about this. She said, of course, but I hope you'll consider it. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. And I realized I didn't have language for this when it was happening. I thought I was being mentored. I thought I was special. I thought I was being cared for. But what was actually happening was systematic grooming by an adult in a position of authority. I also realized there's a reason she waited until I was 30 to confess. By that point, the statute of limitations on many crimes had passed. By that point, the dynamic was so established that I might not even believe myself if I tried to report it. She calculated. She waited until it was safer for her. If you discovered this was happening to you, would you report it? Would you confront the abuser? What would you do? I decided I needed to confront Mrs. Chen directly. I sent her a message. I said, we need to talk. What you've been doing is grooming. It's predatory behavior. I'm not interested in a relationship with you, and I don't think we should be in contact anymore. She responded very quickly. She said, I can't believe you think that way. I've always supported you. I've always cared about you. This is how you repay me? See what she did? She made herself the victim. She made it about what I owed her. She said, if you need time to process, I understand. But I hope you'll reconsider. She was still trying to maintain access to me. She was still trying to manipulate me. I said, I won't reconsider. What you did was wrong. I'm ending contact with you. She said, you're making a mistake. I'm the only person who really understands you. You're going to regret this. That's a threat. That's an abuser losing control and showing their true face. I blocked her number. I blocked her on social media. I made it clear that contact was over, but then I had to deal with the aftermath. I talked to my parents about it. They were shocked. They said, we didn't know this was happening. I said, neither did I. Not until much later. That's how grooming works. I also realized I had to process my feelings about a person I had trusted and looked up to. I had to accept that the mentorship I thought I had received was actually manipulation. That's grief in a way. Grieving the relationship I thought I had, coming to terms with the reality of what it actually was. I considered reporting it to the school, but my therapist pointed out, grooming that happened years ago, without physical contact, is hard to prosecute. The school might not do anything, and it might create more trauma for me in the process. I decided to focus on my own healing instead. This is the reality for many grooming survivors. The abuser often faces no consequences. The legal system is limited. The focus has to be on the survivor's healing. What I've had to do is process the following. Everything I thought was mentorship was manipulation. I'm not responsible for her emotional well-being. I don't owe her anything. Her behavior was predatory, regardless of whether she meant well. My confusion and feelings of obligation are normal responses to grooming. I've had to rebuild my sense of what healthy relationships look like. I've had to learn to recognize grooming patterns so I don't fall into them again. I've had to accept that someone I trusted was deliberately abusing their position of authority. That's a lot to process. How would you define the moment when you recognized you were being groomed? What would that realization feel like? It's been about 2 years since I cut contact with Mrs. Chen. I'm still in therapy. I'm still processing what happened. What I've learned is that grooming has long-term impacts. It affects how I trust people. It affects how I set boundaries. It affects my romantic relationships. I've had to work on recognizing grooming patterns, setting and maintaining boundaries, not feeling responsible for other people's emotions, trusting my gut when something feels off, not confusing special attention with genuine care. I've also had to work through shame. For years, I felt like I should have recognized the manipulation sooner. I felt like I was stupid for not seeing it. My therapist helped me understand grooming is designed to be unrecognizable. Abusers are good at it because they've learned how to manipulate people. The failure is not on the victim for not recognizing it. The failure is on the abuser for doing it. I also joined a support group for survivors of childhood, sexual abuse and exploitation. I wasn't the victim of physical abuse, but I was a victim of grooming and psychological manipulation by someone in a position of authority. Being in that community helped me understand that my experience was real, that my trauma was valid, that I'm not alone. I've also become aware of something. Mrs. Chen probably isn't done. If she's done this to me, she's probably done it to others. Or she's trying to. I've considered reporting it more formally, but I've also realized it's not my responsibility to stop her. My responsibility is to myself. I've rebuilt my life. I have healthier relationships now. I have boundaries. I have people in my life who actually respect me instead of manipulating me. I'm healing. It's not a straight line, but I'm healing. If you knew someone who was being groomed, how would you help them? What would you say? What I want people to understand about grooming is this. Grooming is not always obvious. It doesn't always include physical contact. It doesn't always feel like abuse to the victim. Grooming often feels like special attention and mentorship. Someone who really understands you, care and support, being chosen or special. Intimate conversations, someone who validates you. But it's characterized by power imbalance, adult-child, authority figure, subordinate. Boundary violations increasing over time, isolation from other relationships, making the victim feel responsible for the abuser's emotions, normalizing inappropriate behavior, creating complicity. Grooming can happen between teachers and students, coaches and athletes, clergy and congregants, therapists and clients, bosses and employees, anyone in a position of authority and a person without power. If you're an adult and you're aware of grooming happening, you have a responsibility to say something. If you're a young person and you're experiencing something that feels like the pattern I described, please talk to someone you trust. A parent, a counselor, a trusted adult. If you're a victim of grooming like I was, please know, it's not your fault. You didn't cause it. You shouldn't feel shame. What happened to you was abuse, and healing is possible. I also want to say, Mrs. Chen likely experienced trauma herself. That doesn't excuse her behavior, but it might explain it. Abusers are often victims of abuse. Trauma can perpetuate trauma, but understanding that doesn't mean accepting or forgiving the behavior. It means understanding that everyone is responsible for their own healing, not for passing their pain on to others. So that's the story. And what makes it so important is that it shows how grooming isn't always obvious. It's not always dramatic. It can be subtle, strategic, and years long. This man didn't recognize he was being groomed until 15 years of manipulation had passed. And even then, after the confession, he had to do the work to understand what had actually happened. Grooming is predatory, grooming is abuse, and grooming survivors deserve support and validation. I want to ask you, if you recognize these patterns in your own life, what would you do? Would you reach out for help? Would you confront the abuser? And if you know someone who might be experiencing grooming, would you say something? If you or someone you know is experiencing grooming or sexual abuse, please reach out. For adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, Psychology Today Therapist Finder, BetterHelp by Talkspace. Support groups. Books, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Thanks for watching. If this story made you think about grooming, boundaries, and recognizing predatory behavior, please hit like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.